Now let's examine puts in detail, but a word of caution before we get started. Many people tend to collapse this information and say that a put is the opposite of a call. Don't do this, that will only lead to confusion. I want you to learn the conventions of a put completely separate from those of a call. So first, I want to remind you that every option has two parties involved. You have the holder and the writer. The holder is also known as the buyer, as well as somebody who is long the option. And the writer is the seller, or someone who is short the option. And the writer or seller can also be described as somebody who is covered or uncovered or naked option. Covered means that they are protected against losses in the options contract. Uncovered or naked options means that they are unprotected against losses in the options contract. So let's start out by looking at a put. We have the following example. We have 1XYZ November 75 put at 5. Remember that there's two parties involved with this, and we're going to start out by looking at the holder. When the holder of a put, they have the right, but not the obligation, to sell stock to the writer at the strike price. To use the jargon of Wall Street, the holder has the right to put it to the writer. Under the terms of this option, that would be 100 shares of XYZ at 75. The holder pays out the premium when he or she buys the option. They must pay for that premium no later than T plus 1 business day, where T represents the trade date plus 1 business day. The holder of the put wants the price of the underlying security to go down. Put down the phone, right? Because they know they can sell the stock at the strike price and then buy it back at a lower market price. What therefore is the holder of a put's maximum possible gain? That occurs when the price of the stock drops all the way down to zero, because then the holder of a put knows that they can sell worthless stock to the writer at the strike price, and the only thing that would be deducted from the gain is the premium that they paid to own the options contract. What is the maximum loss for the holder of a put? The premium paid. If the market price goes up against them, the holder of a put will not exercise. They will lose only the premium they paid. What is the holder of a put's break-even point? It is equal to the strike price minus the premium. Remember that the holder of a put pays out the premium. When is he or she going to make that premium back on the put? When the market price goes down. Let's look at an example with the option we have here. 1XYZ November 75 put at 5. XYZ drops to $50 per share, and the holder of a put exercises it. Remember, the holder of a put has paid out $500 a share to buy, or $5 a share times 100 shares to buy this put, $500. When the person exercises this contract, they will buy the stock at $75, knowing that they can buy the stock back in the market at $50. Do you see a gain? Yes, $25 per share times 100 shares for a total gain on the stock transaction of $2,500. Letting out the $500 premium paid on the option, this leaves the holder with a net gain of $2,000. What is the maximum possible loss for the holder? $500. The premium paid. If the market price goes up, the holder of this put will not exercise it, and they will simply lose the option or the premium paid to own this option. What is the break-even point for the holder of this put? It is equal to the strike price minus the premium of $5. $70 per share is the break-even point. Let's look at the writer of a put, the seller. The writer of a put is obligated to buy stock from the holder when the holder exercises. With this option, the writer would be obligated to buy 100 shares of XYZ at $75 per share. For granting this right, the writer of a put receives 100% of the premium. What does the writer of a put want the market price to do? They want the underlying securities to go up. If XYZ rises in price, the holder will not exercise, and the writer will get to keep the premium. So the maximum possible gain for the writer of a put is the premium. What is the maximum possible loss for the writer of a put? That depends on whether or not the writer is covered or uncovered. If the writer is uncovered, then the writer will lose all the way down to zero. If the stock goes to zero and the holder exercises, then the uncovered writer will be obligated to buy worthless stock at the strike price. Let's look at this relative to our example. A customer writes one XYZ November 75 put at 5. XYZ drops to $50 per share, and the customer is exercised. When the option is exercised, the writer will be required to buy the stock at 75. Because the writer is uncovered, he can only go out and sell the stock at 50, therefore incurring a $25 loss per share times 100 shares for a total of $2,500 loss. But remember, for writing this option, they took in the premium of $500, leaving them with a net loss of $2,000. But what is the break-even point for the writer of an uncovered put? It is equal to the strike price minus the premium. Remember that the writer receives the premium. When will the writer lose the equivalent of the premium on the stock? When the price goes down. Put down the phone, right? Now let's look at the same option from the point of view of the writer of a covered call. First, what covers the writer of a put? This is semi-difficult to explain. Remember that the writer of a put is obligated to buy the stock. He or she would be covered if they have a way of selling the stock at a price that is equal to or higher than the option's strike price. So what covers the writer of a put? There are three things. One, being short the stock. You have already sold short the stock, so when it's put to you, you're forced to buy it. You can use the short position in order to cover that put. Number two, you are covered long a put at the same strike price or higher, same expiration or longer, because then when the stock is put to you and you're forced to buy it, you can turn around and put it to somebody else. And the third thing that covers the writer of a put is cash. Note that cash cannot be used to cover the writer of a call. Why a call? Not a call, but with a put, yes? Well, the potential loss with a put is the stock going down to zero, whereas with a call, the loss can be unlimited. So cash can be used to cover the writer of a put, but not the writer of a call. So let's look at the writer of a put. In this case, the customer sells 100 shares of XYZ at $80, and the customer writes one XYZ November 75 put at 5. XYZ drops to $50 a share, and the customer is exercised. In this case, the writer of the put is forced to buy the stock at 75. However, he is not required to go out and sell it in the market at 50. Why not? Well, because the customer has already sold short the stock at 80 and now is buying it back for a profit of $5 per share times 100 shares. So remember that the customer received the premium when he or she wrote the put. That was $5 per share times 100 shares equals $500. So the customer receives premiums of $500 and on the stock transaction makes a profit of $500 for a total gain of $1,000 on this transaction. What is the maximum possible loss for the writer of a covered put? Remember that the writer of a covered put is covered by a short stock position. In our example, how far up can the market move against a short stock position? Unlimited. Therefore, the maximum possible loss for the writer of a covered put using a short stock position is unlimited. In reality, the Options Clearing Corporation, or OCC, does not permit customers to use short stock positions to cover the writing of a put. What is the break-even point for the writer of a covered put? Remember that this customer has used a short stock position to cover the put, and the customer has received premiums of $5 per share times 100 shares. When will the customer lose the $5 per share of premiums received? When the short sales price starts to rise. So in this case, the break-even point for the writer of a covered put is equal to the short sale price of the stock plus the premium. 80 plus 5 equals $85. Now, there's a basic analogy that I want to go over again with you before we move on to our next lesson on put premiums. It's a basic analogy to remember what direction the holder of a call and the holder of a put wants the market to go. And it's pick up the call and put down the phone. Because In a rising market holding a call, we make money when the market goes up. And in a falling market, as the holder of a put, you make money when the market drops. You make money when the market's going down as the holder of a put, so put down the phone. In a rising market, as the holder of a call, you make money when the price of the stock goes past the strike price, past where your premium paid was. So if the stock price is 50 currently, and you bought a call, and you buy one ABC July 50 call at 3, that means the strike price is 50. You have the right to buy that stock at any point when the market price is over 50. So the holder of a call, you want the market price to go up past the strike price. You paid a $3 premium. So you would want the market to go past 53. Anything past 53, you're in profit, having your contract have intrinsic value. If you're a seller of that same contract or holder of a put, it would be 47, because a strike price of 50, put down the phone, that would mean 50 minus $3 per share. The holder of a put starts making money when the market drops. Put down the phone. When the market price goes below $47, everything below that, falling all the way to 0, would be the maximum possible gain for the holder of a put, max loss for the writer of a put. Pick up the call, put down the phone.